The old man's heart stopped beating for exactly 11 seconds. I know this because he counted the silence between each desperate thump in his chest as he lay face down in the burning sand, the sun cooking his back at 59 degrees Celsius, his water container shattered somewhere behind him, and his vision fading to white. In those 11 seconds, Yusuf al-Rashid made peace with death. He had lived 73 years in this merciless desert, and he had always known it would eventually claim him. What he did not know, what he could not possibly have imagined, was that his salvation would come in the form of the very creature he had saved 6 months earlier. A creature that should have been dead. A creature that had traveled over 200 kilometers across the most inhospitable terrain on Earth to find him. This is not a story about survival. This is a story about a debt that transcended species, about a love that defied logic, and about the moment when a dying camel looked into the eyes of a dying man and decided that neither of them would die that day. 6 months before that fateful afternoon, Yusuf had been making his weekly journey to the small trading post at the edge of the Sahara. It was a trip he had made thousands of times over the decades, a familiar path etched into his memory like the wrinkles on his weathered face. His old pickup truck, a battered Toyota that had somehow survived 30 years of desert abuse, groaned and complained as it navigated the rocky terrain. Yusuf paid little attention to its protests. He was thinking about his wife, Fatima, who had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him alone in their small mud brick home at the edge of nowhere. The desert had always been his companion, but after Fatima's death, it had become his only friend. He spoke to the sand dunes as if they could hear him. He argued with the wind when it blew too strong. He thanked the sun each morning for rising, even though its brutal heat made every day a struggle for survival. Some might have called him crazy. Perhaps he was. But loneliness does strange things to a person, and Yusuf had been lonely for a very long time. He spotted the camel from nearly a kilometer away. At first, he thought it was a mirage. The heat created illusions all the time, phantom lakes and impossible shadows that vanished when you approached. But this shape did not vanish. It grew larger, more defined, and as Yusuf drove closer, he realized with growing horror what he was seeing. The camel was lying on its side, its massive body half buried in a sand drift that had formed during the previous night's windstorm. Its legs were twisted at unnatural angles, and even from a distance, Yusuf could see the dark stains of blood soaking into the sand around it. A pack of desert jackals circled nearby, patient and hungry, waiting for the inevitable. Yusuf stopped his truck and stepped out into the furnace-like heat. The temperature gauge on his dashboard read 58 degrees Celsius. The sand beneath his sandals was hot enough to cook meat. Every instinct told him to get back in the truck, to continue on his way, to let nature take its course. The camel was clearly dying. There was nothing he could do. And yet, something in the animal's eyes stopped him cold. The camel was looking directly at him. Not with the blank, glazed stare of an animal in its death throes, but with something that looked almost like recognition. Almost like hope. Yusuf cursed under his breath. He was too old for this. His back ached constantly, his knees had been failing him for years, and he could barely take care of himself, let alone a massive injured animal. But he found himself walking toward the camel anyway, chasing away the jackals with shouts and waves of his arms. They retreated reluctantly, their yellow eyes burning with resentment at being denied their meal. Up close, the camel's condition was even worse than he had feared. Deep gashes covered its flanks, likely from a desperate battle with the jackals or perhaps a fall into a rocky ravine. Its left rear leg was clearly broken, the bone visible through the torn flesh. Dehydration had sunken its eyes and drawn its skin tight against its ribs. By any reasonable assessment, the animal should have been dead already. But it was not dead. It was breathing, shallow and labored breaths that made its entire body shudder with each inhale. And it was still looking at Yusuf with those impossibly aware eyes. "What am I supposed to do with you?" Yusuf asked aloud, his voice cracking in the dry air. "I am just an old man. I have nothing to give you." The camel made a sound, not quite a moan, not quite a cry, but something in between that pierced Yusuf's heart like a blade. In that moment, he made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. It took him nearly 4 hours to get the camel into his truck. He had to remove the tailgate, construct a makeshift ramp from rocks and wooden planks he found scattered in the desert, and essentially drag the massive animal using ropes and every ounce of strength his aging body could muster. Twice, he collapsed from exhaustion, lying in the sand and gasping for breath while the sun beat down mercilessly. Twice, the camel looked at him as if urging him to keep going. By the time Yusuf finally got the animal loaded, The sun was beginning to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and crimson that would have been beautiful under any other circumstances. His truck sagged dangerously under the weight of the camel, but it started when he turned the key, and it moved when he pressed the accelerator. That was enough. The journey back to his home took 3 times longer than usual. Yusuf drove slowly, carefully, avoiding every bump and rock he could see. In his rearview mirror, he watched the camel's head sway with each turn, its eyes never closing, its breathing never stopping. Several times, he was certain the animal had finally died, but each time he stopped to check, those dark eyes would open and fix on him with an expression that made his throat tight. "You will live," Yusuf told the camel as he drove through the night. "I have decided this. And when I decide something, it happens. Ask anyone. Ask the desert. It knows." The camel did not respond, of course, but Yusuf could have sworn he saw something like agreement in its gaze. The following weeks were the hardest of Yusuf's life, and that was saying something for a man who had survived sandstorms, droughts, the death of his wife, and countless other trials that would have broken lesser men. The camel, which Yusuf named Camel, meaning beautiful in Arabic, a name that seemed almost ironic given the animal's battered condition, required constant care. His broken leg needed to be set and splintered, a process that nearly killed both the camel and Yusuf through sheer exhaustion. His wounds needed to be cleaned and bandaged daily, using medical supplies that Yusuf could barely afford and had to travel hours to obtain. And he needed water, so much water, at a time when Yusuf's own supply was barely adequate. Yusuf gave him his share anyway. Day after day, he went thirsty so that Camel could drink. He ate less so that he could afford to buy the nutritional supplements the camel needed. He slept on the floor of his small home because Camel had taken over the shaded area where Yusuf usually rested during the hottest parts of the day. It was madness, pure and simple. And Yusuf did not regret a single moment of it. Slowly, impossibly, Camel began to recover. His wounds closed. His leg, though never quite straight again, healed enough for him to stand and eventually walk. The light returned to his eyes, and with it came a personality that Yusuf had not expected. Camel was stubborn, opinionated, and surprisingly affectionate. He would follow Yusuf around like a massive, awkward puppy, nudging him with his nose when he wanted attention and making displeased grumbling sounds when Yusuf paid more attention to his daily chores than to his camel companion. "You are more demanding than my wife ever was," Yusuf told him one evening, sitting outside and watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast desert sky. And that is truly saying something. Fatima, God rest her soul, was not an easy woman to please. Camel responded by laying his massive head in Yusuf's lap, a gesture of trust and love that made the old man's eyes fill with tears he would never admit to shedding. As the months passed, a bond formed between man and camel that went beyond anything Yusuf could have explained. They developed routines, morning walks when the temperature was still bearable, afternoon rests in the shade of the small acacia tree behind Yusuf's home, evening conversations in which Yusuf spoke and Camel listened with an attentiveness that suggested he understood every word. They became inseparable, two lonely souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. And then came the day that changed everything. It began as an ordinary morning. Yusuf woke before dawn, as he always did, and prepared for his weekly trip to the trading post. Camel watched him with obvious displeasure as he loaded supplies into his truck. The camel hated when Yusuf left, and he made his feelings known through a series of increasingly dramatic vocalizations. "I will be back before nightfall," Yusuf promised, scratching behind Camel's ears in the spot he knew the camel loved. "Stay in the shade. Drink your water. Try not to destroy anything while I am gone." Camel made a sound that seemed to say he would make no such promises. The drive to the trading post was uneventful. Yusuf purchased his usual supplies, flour, rice, tea, medications for his aching joints, and spent an hour chatting with the other elderly men who gathered there to escape the isolation of their desert lives. But as he loaded his purchases into his truck and prepared to leave, he noticed something troubling. The wind had changed direction, and on the horizon, a wall of brown was beginning to form. A sandstorm. And not a small one. This was the kind of storm that could bury a man alive, the kind that turned day into night and stripped flesh from bone if you were unlucky enough to be caught in its path. Yusuf knew he should wait it out at the trading post. The building was sturdy, the owner was hospitable, and there was no shame in respecting the desert's power. But something gnawed at him, a feeling he could not explain, an urgent whisper in the back of his mind that told him he needed to get home. Now, he thought of Camel, alone in the compound, with no one to lead him to shelter if the storm arrived before Yusuf returned. The camel was smart, yes, but he was also trusting. He would wait for Yusuf, even if it meant waiting in the path of destruction. Against all logic, against all common sense, Yusuf got in his truck and began driving toward home. The storm caught him halfway there. One moment, he could see the path ahead clearly. The next, the world disappeared behind a curtain of sand and fury. Wind rocked his truck so violently that he feared it would overturn. Visibility dropped to zero. He could not even see the hood of his own vehicle. And the noise, God, the noise, was like 1,000 demons screaming directly into his ears. Yusuf tried to keep driving, tried to navigate by memory and instinct, but it was impossible. The truck's engine coughed, choked on the sand that was infiltrating every opening, and died. No amount of turning the key would restart it. He was stranded, blind, in the middle of the most powerful sandstorm he had experienced in over 50 years of desert living. The temperature inside the truck rose rapidly as the sand piled against the windows, blocking any hint of breeze. 57 degrees. 58. 59. Yusuf felt his vision swimming, his thoughts becoming sluggish. He knew the signs of heat stroke. He knew he needed to get out, to find shelter, to do something. But when he tried to open his door, the weight of the accumulated sand made it immovable. He was trapped. And he was going to die. Time became meaningless. Minutes or hours passed. Yusuf could not tell the difference. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind filled with memories of Fatima, of his childhood, of a camel with impossibly aware eyes who had looked at him and seen something worth saving. "I am sorry, Camel," he whispered through cracked lips. "I should have waited. I should have." He did not finish the thought. The darkness claimed him completely. When Yusuf next opened his eyes, he was certain he was dead. There was no other explanation for what he was seeing. The storm had passed, the sun was shining with brutal intensity, and standing directly in front of him, having somehow appeared inside his sand-buried truck through means he could not comprehend, was Camel. No, that was impossible. His mind was playing tricks on him. Hallucinations were common in the final stages of heat stroke. He was seeing what he wanted to see, nothing more. But then Camel's hot, moist breath washed over his face, and Yusuf realized with stunned amazement that he was not hallucinating. The camel was real. He was here, and he was trying to save Yusuf's life. Camel had not appeared inside the truck, of course. That would have been truly impossible. Instead, the camel had somehow tracked Yusuf's vehicle through the storm, had waited for the worst of it to pass, and had then begun digging. Digging with his massive, calloused feet, pushing sand away from the driver's side door with the same determination that Yusuf had shown when rescuing him 6 months earlier. The door was now partially exposed, and through the gap Camel had created, the camel was nudging Yusuf, urging him to move. "How?" Yusuf croaked, his voice barely audible. "How did you find me?" Camel did not answer. He could not answer, but the look in his eyes said everything. Some debts transcend words. Some bonds cannot be explained by logic or science. And some love simply knows where to go, regardless of distance or danger. With Camel's help, Yusuf managed to squeeze through the gap in the door and collapse onto the sand outside. The temperature was murderous, 59 degrees by any reasonable estimate, and he knew he could not survive long without water. But Camel had thought of that too. Strapped to the camel's side, secured with rope that Yusuf recognized from his own compound, was a container of water. Not enough to last forever, but enough to bring Yusuf back from the edge of death. The journey home took 2 days. Yusuf could not walk for more than a few minutes at a time. His body was too damaged, too dehydrated, too old for such abuse. So Camel carried him instead, walking slowly and carefully, stopping frequently to let his human companion rest and drink. At night, the camel would curl his massive body around Yusuf, creating a shelter of warmth and protection against the desert's cold darkness. They did not speak, not in words, anyway. But in those 2 days, traveling across the endless sand toward a home they both loved, man and camel said everything that needed to be said. When they finally arrived at Yusuf's compound, the old man collapsed to his knees and wept. He wept for his own survival, yes, but also for the profound gift he had been given, the gift of love from a creature he had once saved, returned when he needed it most. Camel stood beside him, patient as always, his massive head bowed as if in understanding. "I saved your life," Yusuf whispered, reaching up to touch the camel's scarred face. "And now you have saved mine. We are even, my friend." Our debt is paid. Camel made a sound, the same sound he had made all those months ago, lying injured in the sand, looking at Yusuf with hope in his eyes. But this time, the sound was different. This time, it sounded almost like disagreement, because Camel knew something that Yusuf was only beginning to understand. Some debts are never meant to be paid in full. Some bonds are not about keeping score. They are about showing up, day after day, through storms and silence, through loneliness and loss, through all the hardships that life throws at you. They are about love. Pure, simple, transcendent love. And that kind of love does not have a balance sheet. It does not have a beginning or an end. It simply is, constant and true, like the desert itself. Yusuf lived for another 7 years after that day. He never took another trip to the trading post alone. Camel always accompanied him, walking proudly beside the old truck as if daring anyone or anything to threaten his human companion. They became legendary in the small community of desert dwellers, the old man and his miraculous camel, inseparable until the very end. When Yusuf finally passed away, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 80, Camel was lying beside him. The camel had somehow known, had sensed that his friend was leaving, just as he had sensed so many things over the years that defied explanation. And when the neighbors found them the next morning, they said that Camel was making a sound unlike anything they had ever heard from a camel before. It sounded, they said, almost like crying. Camel did not survive his companion by long. 3 days after Yusuf's burial, the camel laid down in the same spot where the old man had first nursed him back to health, closed his impossibly aware eyes, and quietly stopped breathing. Some said he died of a broken heart. Others said he had simply chosen to follow his friend into whatever came next. I like to think it was both. Because in the end, their story was not about a man saving a camel, or a camel saving a man. It was about something far more profound, the recognition that we are all lost in our own deserts, struggling against our own storms, and that the greatest gift we can ever receive is the knowledge that we do not have to face those struggles alone. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes love speaks a language that needs no words. And sometimes, in the burning heart of the Sahara, at temperatures that should make compassion impossible, two lonely souls find each other and create something that transcends death itself. If this story touched something in your heart, if you felt even a fraction of the connection between Yusuf and Camel, I would be grateful if you would share those feelings in the comments below. Tell me about the unexpected bonds that have shaped your own life. Tell me about the moments when love found you in the desert of your own loneliness. And if you have not experienced such a moment yet, hold on to hope. The desert is vast, but it is not infinite. And somewhere out there, your Camel is waiting, patient, faithful, and ready to carry you home. If stories like this resonate with your soul, consider staying on this journey with us. There are more tales to tell, more connections to explore, more reminders that in a world that often feels harsh and unforgiving, love finds a way. It always finds a way. Until next time, may your own deserts be kind, and may you never walk them alone.